So friends, today's topic, as is already announced, pitfalls of understanding the Hindu scriptures. I understood that there would be 2 talks on the Upanishads, which you had already. So I thought it would be a good idea to give some clarifications about some ideas that are dealt with in the Hindu scriptures. Many a time you will hear even trained scholars missing the vital understanding of some Hindu tenets. And with this misunderstanding, the whole interpretation would stand useless. Therefore, for this particular reason, for quite some time now, I had been contemplating on such a subject. It is a really big subject. Pitfalls or difficulties in understanding the Hindu scriptures. The title of the topic does not give the whole idea about what I want to analyze. Actually, what I want to deal with is, number 1, how some people whose scholarship has been stained by a conservative and dogmatic milieu or background would not like to understand the basic difference between their faiths and those expressed by the Hindu scriptures. That is number 1. Number 2, how some would therefore misinterpret them based on their evident bias. Number 3, how some would contrast the features of the Hindu scriptures to their unfounded beliefs, saying that they are the ones who have the right, who are right. Their scriptures have the whole truth. They are the only chosen people, and others are non-believers, and so on. Number 4, how, very unfortunately though, the Hindu intelligentsia are themselves eager to imitate the colonial ideas of such critics. There is always an unhealthy comparison in which the critics' biases are taken as the gold standards against which others' opinions are judged. That is always a wrong approach to an honest scholarship. In his book, The Evolution of God, it is a really big book, the author Robert Wright speaks about new readjustments of ideas of God and appreciation of values in other religions based on a modern commercial win-win theory. Professor Max Muller, wrote an article titled A Real Mahatman in the August 1896 issue of the paper 19th Century. It was the first article of its kind because it was for the very first time that an article in a reputed paper introduced Sri Ramakrishna to the Western world. Professor Max Muller later wrote a small book, Ramakrishna, His Life and Sayings. Also, you know that the French Nobel laureate in literature, Romain Rolland, wrote a book named Swami Vivekananda and the Universal Gospel. Both of these famous Westerners took great pains to apologetically or regretfully explain to their Western readers why they should value the lives and teachings of these 2 great personalities. So much careful they had to be because of the past history of ruthless persecutions, even killing of many truth tellers by the authoritarian religious establishments. These are proofs of the bias of the so-called majoritarianism, the upper hand taken by the majority religions. That is not our subject at the moment that we want to deal with. But this is by way of introduction, setting the background. I am giving you a short perspective how we should be careful to judge basic scriptural translations against a parochial or narrow-minded interpretation. The door is now open for us to scrutinize how history has distorted the great values, even the scientific values for that matter. I am going to do this work for the sake of serious spiritual practitioners. I would rather show you the real interpretations of some words, some ideas that are so different from what we generally accept to be correct without questioning. I believe these interpretations or clarifications would help you to appreciate the ideas better in a new milieu, a new setting. It would breathe fresh air into our intellectual systems and help us to be proud and not apologetic of the teachings of the most ancient and most universal of the scriptures that the human genius has ever produced. Don't worry, they have stood the test of time so far and will do so in millennia to come. Sri Ramakrishna did not learn arithmetic because it taught deduction, subtraction. That is the simple reason. The Hindu scriptures are always all-inclusive. In none of the Hindu scriptures there are instances of hatred preached against any religion by ridiculing their followers. Let me take up the topics one by one. There are so many of such, but I have to limit my talk within this 1 hour or so. At least after the clarifications are given, you will understand the terms used by Hinduism in a better light for the future. Then your understanding of the Hindu scriptures will be clearer and there will be scope for less and less questions and doubts. I may deal with maybe 6 topics today if our time permits. So number 1 topic that I want to deal with, that is the very basic one. There is a difference between the word Darshana and the English word translation philosophy. Darshana means what has been seen, like Deva Darshana. You go and stand before a deity in the temple and see that deity. That is called Darshana. Or in philosophical term, Darshana means what has been experienced, like seeing with open eyes. Suppose you go up to the top of a 10-floor building. Now from there, you look down and talk to the people below. Then those of us who are standing on the ground ask you about how to reach the top of the 10th floor because you are there. What you narrate from there is not a speculative information. This is what is called Darshana, or your direct experience. You have yourself gone up there. You have seen the way. Right? For us who are on the ground, it will be a philosophical information, kind of imagination, even though your information is a direct information. We will imagine that way. We will imagine the path or the lifts or the staircases that are leading to that floor. that would help by giving us some information. But it is a speculative philosophy for us. So the translation of the word Darshana into exact philosophy is not very correct. Philosophy can be speculative, but Darshana is never such. We know that there are the Shad Darshanas, 6 philosophies in the Indian systems. We call them 6 systems of Indian philosophy. They are Sankhya Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa means the Karmakanda portions of the Vedas, and Uttara Mimamsa means the Upanishads. The Advaita Darshana is organized into 3 pillars. According to their hierarchy, they are: the Upanishads are the direct knowledge, that is the Darshana. The Brahma Sutras are formal reasoning or logic. And the Smriti, that means popular interpretations of the direct knowledge. It is in Hindu religion that questioning has been given the second most important place in the hierarchy of scriptures. It is only in Hindu religion. Then the second topic, Jato Mat Tato Path. We know that Sri Ramakrishna has said that as many faiths, so many paths. This is the message of Sarva Dharma Samanmaya, harmony of religions. We sometimes say that this is the main purpose of Sri Ramakrishna's mission on this earth. But Holy Mother did not approve this idea that this is the principal message of Sri Ramakrishna. She said, it is the renunciation of all that would stand in our way to liberation, which was Sri Ramakrishna's main teaching. Sri Ramakrishna showed this in his life. Yes, Sri Ramakrishna has said, as many faiths, so many paths. But by this, he did not say that all religions are same. That would be a mistake, a grave mistake. Then there will be no use trying to practice acceptance. If all are the same, then what is the question of accepting? Sri Ramakrishna said that there are many paths leading to the same goal. Goal is one. Goal is the same, not the paths. He said the same God, but never the same path. He rather said that there are some diabolical practices in some paths, in some religions, like preaching hatred, casting spells or curse on others, etc., etc. These are diabolical practices. These are like the back doors that is used for disposing of trash. But they are doors all the same. The back doors are valid doors to enter the house through. But, he said, Sri Ramakrishna said, if we are children of God, we should not hesitate to enter our Father's house through the main door. That is our birthright. The main differences that Hinduism makes are, number 1, we believe in rebirth because that is the most rational and acceptable theory. Swami Vivekananda said, if you can find some theory which is better than this, I am ready to accept that. Number 2, there is no eternal hell or eternal heaven in Hinduism. Number 3, there is no original sin as such. Number 4, there is no concept of a soul being a combination of mind and body. Even the samyoga or connection mentioned in the Yoga Sutras do not confirm this idea of a soul. made by only matter. There is a big misunderstanding about the concept of soul and self. That means Jivatman and Atman. I will not refer to the concept of non-dual Vedanta here, because my comparison will be with dualistic religions, Indian or non-Indian. It is known to all of us. But let me take up an authentic book, the Yoga Sutras. The first misunderstanding about the word yoga in the context of Yoga Sutras is it is mostly interpreted or mistranslated as a union. Yoga means union. The dictionary meaning of the word yoga is actually a connection or union. But this word has completely opposite meaning, diagonally opposite meaning in the Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutra says in the second chapter, aphorism number 25, Tad abhavat samyoga abhava tad drishehe kaivalyam. The liberation of the bound soul happens when it is disconnected from the mistaken connection between the Purusha and the Prakriti. Purusha is consciousness and Prakriti is unconscious matter. It is a disconnection from the matter which is called yoga. Similarly, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Tam vidya dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam. Samyoga viyoga means disconnection of the wrong connection is called yoga, Sri Krishna says. Nowhere in the Yoga Sutras it is mentioned that yoga means a connection. This is a ridiculous translation. Yoga means union or connection in respect of or in the context of Yoga Sutras is a ridiculous interpretation. The Yoga Sutra begins with the word yoga in the very first and second aphorisms. Atha yoga anusasanam is the very first aphorism. And the second one says yoga hachitta vritti nirodha. So atha yoga anusasanam means, the first aphorism means, now begins the instructions about yoga. Vyasa, the celebrated commentator, writes, yoga means samadhi, not union. Not union. Please remember this. And how to achieve that samadhi? By breaking all connections, by breaking all unions with the matter. Chitta vritti nirodha. So in the very beginning of the book, if you learn that yoga means a union, then the whole book becomes a trash. Whatever you learn after this would be just a trash. Do you get the point? The foundation is so wrong. And that is how many so-called scholars teach. Now we come to the concept of soul. In some religions, soul means a combination of the body and mind. Hence, after our death, our physical body has to go to heaven or hell. It is stated in the Yoga Sutras, that is a dualistic philosophy, as I said, like many other dualistic religions as such, that Samyoga is a connection between the Atman or seer and the seen objects. Samyoga is a connection between consciousness and matter. It is a mistaken connection. Or Ekatva is a oneness between the powers of the Atman or consciousness and the powers of or the act of seeing, Darshana. Even all dualistic philosophies in Hindu tradition speak of an Atman consciousness which is beyond the so-called soul or the body-mind complex. In the Yoga Sutras, there is hardly any importance given to this peculiar connection between the body and the mind. This connection definitely breaks at death. These Hindu traditions do never swallow the idea of the body going to the other world after death. Never. Hence the soul, that is the body-mind union of other religions, is in no way the concept of Jivatman in Hinduism. Jivatman cannot be translated as soul. The Hindu liberation does not happen to or for the body-mind complex. Liberation does not happen to matter, neither to the body nor to the mind, because these are matter. It is a liberation from the body-mind complex or from both separately. Liberation not to the body-mind complex but from the body-mind complex. So liberation from the soul, Jivatman, is bound. Do you get the point? Suffering or enjoyment is due to this duality of body and mind appearing as one. Even according to particle physics, the single light suffers from wave-particle duality, suffers. And all duality belongs to this world, matter. A question may be asked, if the same I, Mr. So-and-so, do not get the same body in the next birth, then I become another, man or woman or others or any subhuman being. Then what is the use of spiritual teachings? It is after all me, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, who is learning these things in this life. Then it will be me who will not be there in the next birth. The same question is asked by the Katha Upanishad. Yeyam prete vichikitsa manusye, etc., etc. The meaning is, we know that we as human beings have to die. What happens after that? There is a confusion. Some say that there remains something after death. Some deny that. And then Nachiketa is asking the Yama, the king of death, please explain the truth about it. Yama is the person who knows stories on both sides. When we are alive, Yama knows what we are doing. And when we are dead, he knows what happens afterwards. So he has knowledge of both sides. So Nachiketa has a greatest of the teachers in front of him, Yama, whom he could ask. This is the mantra. The whole of the Katha Upanishad is created to answer this one question. This one question. Medically speaking, almost all our cells change in 8 years. And all of them are completely new in 12 years. So the I, Swami Baneshananda, get a complete new body in every 12 years. Even that is not enough. One American young man did his DNA test to know about his ancestry. He has found that he has about 75% Cambodian DNA and around 20% Eskimo or Inuit, and the rest about 5% from Kazakhstan, Ireland, etc. Now see, he is born as 75% Cambodian, born as a biological entity with 75% Cambodian genes, DNA. And interestingly, there is not a single American DNA in his body. But his passport, his language, his upbringing habits, his affiliation, etc., that are all added things. They are all American. Actually, there is an American clothing put on by a Cambodian person. Clothing. This is just clothing. Even after the DNA test, he cannot believe that he was not an American. Who is he? And then the cells of the same body change in every 12 years. So who is this Mr. Baneshananda? Who he really is? That is the question. The American man is really confused. and so are we. And this happens in this relative biological world. Then look at our states of experiences. When I am in the waking state, I am called the waker. The waker is the subject in the waking state. In the dream state, I am the dreamer, and the dreamer is the subject in the dream state. In the deep sleep, I am the sleeper, and the sleeper is the subject there. Now suppose you, the waker, go to sleep and start dreaming. Who is sleeping now? The waker subject is sleeping. Now who is awake in the dream? The dreamer subject is awake because he is dreaming. Dreamer is awake. So dreamer is awake and the waker is asleep. Now suppose the dreamer subject's dream is broken. That means the dreamer goes to sleep and the waker wakes up. Right? And then an absurd thing happens. In the waking state, the waker subject remembers the dream of the dreamer. See the logical fallacy here. So absurd, ridiculous. When the dream was going on and the dreamer was dreaming, the waker was sleeping. Then how can he remember the dreamer's dream? When you are dreaming, how can I remember your dream? I am sleeping. Similarly, how can the waker remember the sleeper's experience? How can the waker remember the dreamer's dream and the sleeper's experience, sleeper's sleep? Hence it is proved that you, my dear so-and-so, you are common to all these three states. That is the connection. The three states belong to the body-mind. So you, my dear Atman, you have three states. You have three states. You are not the three states. You have them, you are not them. Correct? Hence you are different from the states. Hence the body-mind complex is different from you. Right? Again, one state by turn cancels two other states. When you are awake, there is no sleep state nor the dream state. You are awake, correct? Hence these states are unreal. Unreal. Because each cancels the other two. Unreal means relative. You are the continuous truth, even without the states, even without the states, even without the body-mind. You are you. Then how do we get the experiences of our travel between different bodies, rebirth? Because the body-mind complex is destroyed at death. So how do we travel? No. Because that is a wrong understanding, wrong interpretation. The Jivatman in Hindu scriptures is a combination of body plus mind and the Atman. Body, mind, Atman. A combination of three in one. It is a 3 in 1. But the sole concept of other religions is a combination of body and mind, 2 in 1. To simplify it, according to Hinduism, after the death of the body, the mind and the Atman combination still remains. Body is gone. The mind and the Atman combination still remains. That is the subtle jiva which travels to another body, physical body. And when the manonasa, the destruction of the manas, the mind happens, the jiva attains liberation. The liberation happens while one is still living or immediately after death. Hence, study of the Upanishads is necessary. Anyway, it is not the place for further discussion in this matter here. This is from the Mandukya Upanishad. I have conducted 23 online classes on this Upanishad in detail, which are available on YouTube. That is a fascinating study. If you have never done this, you do not know what the real taste of Vedanta is. Sri Ramakrishna told a story. There was a farmer. He had a young son. One night he dreamt that he became a king. He had 3 sons and daughters, princes and princesses. He was enjoying his life as a king. Suddenly his dream broke by the violent shaking of his body by his wife. He woke up and his wife was crying because their only son had died. The farmer was now completely disoriented between the waking and the dream states. He did not know between his 2 experiences now which one is true. He needed to wake up fully to the waking state. Then only the dream would be a dream, an unreal state. Similarly, we are between the waking state and another some state. When this waking state of ours will become like a dream, then we will be in the awakened state. This is called enlightenment, waking up from the waking state itself. Mukti or liberation happens to the soul which is in bondage. And then it happens here and now. It is called Jivan Mukti or liberation while someone is still alive. It happens to you whatever way you understand this you. It is not a posthumous or after death fact only. And if liberation can happen here and now, it can happen after death too. So don't worry, you, my dear so and so, you get liberation from your body-mind complex. That is what is called mukti, or in a sense moksha. One famous person, Hirananda, came to see Sri Ramakrishna when Sri Ramakrishna was lying as a patient in Kashipur on his bed. Sri Ramakrishna, was suffering from cancer at that time. Hirananda asked, if he is a holy man, then why should he suffer? Sri Ramakrishna smiled and asked his attendant devotee, tell him that it is the body which is suffering, not me. So this much is about this idea of soul or jiva. Then more clarification about a word, papam. Papam and Punyam in Hindu religion. There is again another wrong interpretation. It is about the word papam. It is wrongly translated as sin. Actually speaking, sin is a loaded word, and this translation of papam as sin is not supported by logic also. Papam in Hinduism is contrasted with punyam. Punyam means merits or good results or virtues for good works, a positive score that you get from your work. Then papam means demerits. The quantity of papa punya is unique for each one of us. Hence, we are different. Papam and punyam, vices and virtues, or merits and demerits, belong to the mind in the form of samskara or impression. Both these have to be exhausted before liberation. Not only Papam, but Punyam also before liberation. And the mind is also destroyed. That is why Sri Krishna says, Abrahma bhuvanal lokat punaravartino Arjuna. You may do some good deeds, some virtues and go to Brahma Loka, but punaravartina, you come back to this material world for working out your liberation. The Isha Upanishad says, Atman is apapa viddham. Shankaracharya explains, apapa viddham means dharma, adharma, adi, papa, varjitam, arahitam. The Atman is not touched by the merits, demerits, vices and virtues. Both. Papa cannot be genetically transferred from our parents. Genetic transfer is biological. That is how the idea of original sin. But we are concerned with the spiritual transfer, which is the psychology of epigenetics. Beyond means epi, genetics means the control of the genes. Right? Please remember it. Sri Ramakrishna said, all the sins of the body fly away if one chants the name of God and sings His glories. Punyam means virtues or merits. Papa means vices, demerits, like you get a negative point. It is we who are responsible for our own papam or punyam. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used this example of the birds. He said the birds of sin dwell in the tree of the body. Singing the name of God is like clapping your hands. As at a clap of the hands the birds in the tree fly away, so do our sins disappear at the chanting of God's name and glories. Sri Ramakrishna wants to imply that the birds are not the integral part of the tree. They come from somewhere, sit on the tree and again fly away, because they don't belong to the tree. Similarly, papa or demerits and punyam merits are not there in the nature of the Atman. That is the difference. Then we will take up the idea of evil or devil in Hindu religion. Let us consider a few questions to understand this. What are the roots of the evil? Where does it come from? The definition of evil according to Hindu religion or Vedanta is devil or evil is what stands as an obstacle in our way to spiritual fulfillment. In our day-to-day life, lust or kama, wealth, kanchana, act as evil if they are not used in a regulated manner. The genes in a biological body are encoded with selfishness for its own survival and propagation of its kind. The Hinduism believe in rebirth. A transmigrating soul is a combination of the divine spark and the individual vital forces, the mind, which carry forward the baggage of the past impressions of its own deeds, both good and bad. When this soul enters a body and lives in it, it has to deal with these two natural propensities, lust and greed. They are the two faces of one thing called selfishness. Genetically, as I said, we are selfish. It is not bad to be selfish for a benign purpose, but it is bad or evil to be selfish at the cost of one's own spiritual development and at the cost of others. There is no concept of hereditary transmission of sin or evil in Hindu religion, I said. Every individual is responsible for his or her own good and bad works or deeds. When it is equitable for us to claim credits for ourselves for our good deeds, it is also equally equitable that we take the blame ourselves for our bad deeds. then no devil needs to be invoked and personified. It is not possible to trace back the origin of our individuality. It is barred by time and it leads to infinite regression. Unending, not solving. It is like searching for the cause of a cause, then its cause, then its cause, then its cause, and so on. The fallacy in this logic is that if you search for a cause of a cause, then the present cause does not remain a cause. It will become an effect of a cause. So how do you search for the cause of a cause? You search for the cause of an effect. This is the fallacy in logic. Like for example, one cannot postulate a father for the Father in heaven in Christianity, because then the Father in heaven will become a son. Then second question, a few questions, for example, Judaism, Christianity know several figures who are personifying the evil, Satan, the snake, demons. Are there similar figures in the traditional Hinduism? Actually, there is no separate personification of the evil in Hinduism. Vedanta says that a person himself or herself becomes an evil or devil or Satan by doing evil deeds. Similarly, one will become a saint or a prophet or a godman by doing good deeds. It is rather a law which is known as the law of karma. It is based on the golden rule, as you sow, so shall you reap. It stresses the point that we can undo what we have ourselves done. That is our right. But it is not possible to know when it all began. Then number 3, what kind of human behavior the Hinduism or Vedanta is regarding as evil? What kind of behavior? As I have already said, any kind of behavior that harms your own spiritual well-being is bad or evil, even as any behavior that harms others' well-being. So, it has both personal and societal implication. Number 4, how a human being can defeat the evil, or what kind of behavior one has to avoid because they separate him from the divine. One of the main tenets of Hinduism is that we are all divine, as the children of God or as part and parcel of the same infinite divine reality called Brahman. So we have to behave in two complementary ways, to justify our divinity and number 2, to respect others' divinity too. It is said in the Mahabharata, one should not behave towards others in a way that is disagreeable to one's own self. This is the essence of morality. All other activities are due to selfish desires, Mahabharata says. There is a set of rules that one has to follow for one's own personal good and for the peace and happiness of others in the society. They are to be practiced both mentally and physically. Unselfish love, empathy, cleanliness, contentment, austerities, study of books, and all, non-stealing, moderation in eating, drinking, etc. That means one has to avoid the opposites of these rules. This practice will purify the mind, and it will be then possible for us to take up serious spiritual practices, like the practice of giving up or discernment between permanent and impermanent, detachment, meditation or contemplation, etc. Actually, the truth is, in most of the cases, people run after many religious gurus for some material purposes, like to get rid of a material problem or suffering, or to get some material benefit. Meditation has to be practiced with its prerequisites like both physical and mental purity, detachment, and all these things. And it has to be learned from a competent guru, and these are all there in detail in the Yoga Sutras. Now, whatever time is left, I will try to take up the fifth point, which is called the law of karma. Law of karma is contrasted with two other laws. One is called determinism, another is called free will. It is everyone's experience that a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, a crawling caterpillar turning into a flying butterfly. In this life itself we have seen. With our own very eyes. And as we have said, we transfer or change all ourselves almost in 12 years. Hence we are constantly being reborn physically. Constantly being reborn. Rebirth is a practical experience by you, my dear so-and-so, in this life itself. In this life itself. There are three main theories that we may examine. One is, as I said, determinism, or in simple terms, fatalism. Then free will, and then the law of karma of Hinduism. Determinism or fatalism is a theory of helplessness of a human being in the face of his or her choices. You have no choice. You have no choice about your past. That is, of course, true. You have no choice about your present. That may not be true. And about your future, that is completely wrong. Because deterministic philosophies say that they are already determined. Whatever you may do, that is also determined already. It is a concept of a soul without any freedom. Without any freedom. On the other hand, free will is a theory that says that you should have a free will to choose what you should do, or a free will that is not influenced by the past. And law of karma is a free will that does not deny the controlling power of the past, but it asks a question: how free is the free will? How free is the free will? The example is, suppose a bird can fly. We say a bird can fly. This is a fact. The meaning is a bird is free to fly. A bird is free to fly. That is why a bird can fly. Right? No. It is not fully right. A bird is free to fly. That is why we say a bird can fly. No. It is influenced by preconditions. The law of karma answers it. A bird is free to fly because it is not free from wings. You and I cannot fly because we don't have wings. Therefore, the wings are the first conditions, preconditions to fly. A bird is free to fly because it is not free from wings. So one cannot deny a pre-existing cause, but one is free to do or undo one's own karma. That is law of karma. Hence one can decide on one's own future. Here lies the freedom of the individual. That much is the free will. One is the maker of one's own destiny. Sri Ramakrishna has given the example of a cow which is tied to a post with a rope. The length of the rope is the scope of the individual to use the free will. Otherwise, we know, if one is given absolute freedom, that means a long rope. Give someone a long rope, then that fellow will hang himself. The meaning of the word karma is both good and bad, not only bad. That is a misuse of the word by many when one says, it is my karma to suffer like that. To refer to just a bad result. It is my karma that I am suffering. And it has been a fad to use it in respect of bad happenings in one's life. This is very wrong. This is the philosophy of the escapists, irresponsible people. English language has done such things throughout millennia. And then, well, I will stop here because we have come to the end of our time. So I thank you very much for your time and for your participation.